Welcome back, journalism students. We are almost done this What is News unit. So there will be a test, an open note test coming up soon. So today we're going to think about, well, why do journalists exist? Because the reasons for their existence actually connect to why a story is a story, why it makes the news. So we're going to do a little journal, and we're going to take a look at the functions of a journalist. All right, your pun of the day. The weather forecast was for freezing rain, and sure enough, it was a nice day. I feel like we had that one before, so sorry about that. All right, so purpose is to learn the functions of a journalist and identify news judgment. We'll be taking, we kind of already done that, but we're trying to understand why journalists exist and how they determine what is news. So we'll review what is news according to the radio and the internet. We'll determine why something is news, and we'll identify why journalists exist and define the different functions of a journalist. So we talked about radio last time. We said news according to radio is hard news. It's usually just the facts. It's timely. So timeliness is important. It's a lot of breaking news. It's dependent on the audience. The audience is usually in the car, and the audience can only hear. They cannot see. So that helps break down what is news according to radio and what is not. And if you're on, a rock station, a music station of some sort, the news may not have any journalists, but they still may have some news. And so it may be a little bit more entertaining and more unusual. We also talked about what is news according to the internet. We talked about blogs and wire services, how journalists use blogs to supplement the material that is printed, how they also try to use it to engage their audience. And wire services are, those are companies that sell their news, sell their video clips, sell their audio clips. And so Associated Press is the biggest one. Reuters is one that's geared towards more of the economy, and the New York Times has their own as well. So we said that news according to the internet is based on everything. It's video, it's audio, it's what's unusual, what's important. It could be your, 5-year-old brother who just posted something about what he did today. Okay, it is everything. So that makes it very difficult for the journalist, because you have to decipher what is important, what is interesting, what is truthful, and what would engage your audience. So we talked about news according to newspapers based upon frequency, setting, audience, and advertising. News according to magazines is based on frequency and usually news that you want to know, not so much that you need to know. News according to television is based on importance, interest, controversy, timeliness, proximity, things that are caught on tape. It's all about getting the advertising revenue, which means you got to have the greatest amount of viewers. Radio is similar to that idea. You need the greatest amount of listeners, because they're based upon literally selling air, which is not something tangible, but it's based on hard news, timeliness, audience, and some entertainment. And then the internet is everything. So now we're going to try to figure out, well, why do journalists exist? We're going to take a look at examples of political, economic, century, record-keeping, entertainment, social, and marketplace functions, and so forth. Okay, so I want you to take a minute and go ahead and complete this journal. What are the responsibilities of journalists? Why do we have journalists? All right, so normally you would have taken notes on the functions of a journalist, but we are going to skim through them today. Okay, so the first function of a journalist is the century function, and this connects with that term advance. The century function is when a journalist is giving their audience a sneak peek at what is to come, what is going to happen in the future. So it may be a reminder of a big event that's coming. It may be saying, you know what, you're going to be driving an electric car pretty soon, or the car is going to be driving you and it's going to be electric, right? So the journalists are meant to take a look at trends in a variety of different realms, whether it be in sports and entertainment and politics and so forth. It's taking a look at what is to come. That's the century function. Then you have the record-keeping function. This is where a journalist is a historian. The last issue of the Devil's Herald, we really focused on that record-keeping function. We were, creating that issue about the pandemic. And so a lot of the stories were about the pandemic. They were giving different perspectives, different facts. And so you need to recognize that as a journalist, you are kind of writing for a time capsule. People will take a look at what happened in the past, and they'll use it for history books or other perspectives, other research. So, but even more simplistic, it's just keeping the basic facts. Who won the game last night? How many people voted for this candidate? Who won this race? What did Congress vote on, and who voted for it? And what is the new law? Things like that. Entertainment function is always there. You're writing to entertain. This is soft news. It's features, it's profiles. It could be about celebrities, right? If you're not engaging your audience, you don't have an audience. So the entertainment function is always key. And that's why we talked about what is more important, hard news or soft news. And really, it's a little bit of both. You got to have a blend. If you're just giving hard news all the time, it can be very boring and you can tune out. I mean, just during this pandemic, I check to see what's going on because it's important. But after a while, I get dull to it. I get numb to it, because it's not as entertaining. Then we have the social function. And journalists exist to provide something for people to talk about. All right. You're communicating with the audience and you're giving them something to talk about. That's why sports are so important, because people like to escape. They like to get away. They are interested in that because you never know what's going to happen. Right. And so stories that happen in the news are the same way. The unusual, the interesting, the sad, the exhilarating. This gives us something to talk about in society. Marketplace. Now, marketplace, don't be careful with marketplace, because it is not about what is sold. This is not an economic term. It's a journalistic term. So you need to think of the economy of information. And so marketplace function is a forum for ideas. This is why there's the opinion section in a newspaper, where there are editorials written by the editors. There are columns written by columnists. There are letters to the editor to give their ideas. You see this in a larger scale on the internet with the comments on below each story, providing ideas, providing feedback. Kind of goes along with blogs. Why do blogs exist? Well, it provides a larger forum for ideas, whether they be from the journalist or from their audience. Agenda setting. This is not directly associated with what a story may be produced or why a story may be produced, but it's this idea that as the journalist, you are setting the agenda. All right. And this is done by creating the front page of a newspaper or a blog, or determining which stories are first in a radio or television broadcast. You're saying these are the most important. So this is where you as a journalist have to determine what the audience should be thinking about, not what they think. And that's where, if you're telling them what they think, then really you're not a journalist. You are giving an opinion, which, columnists can give opinions and be journalistic, so there is a blend there. But you need to recognize that agenda setting is saying these are the most important things. And it's something that's done inherently based upon what is on the front page, what goes on page 7, what goes on page 10, what's further down on the website, what is talked about at the very end of the broadcast, right? That tells you what is important and what is not as important. And then you have the watchdog, or the political function. And this is not necessarily about politics. So focus on the term watchdog. But this is where the journalists really are another branch of the government, right? When you think about the government, you have the executive branch, which is the president. You have the legislative branch, which is the Congress, the representatives and the senators, right? And then you have the judicial branch, which is all the Supreme Court judges. But then there's a fourth branch that a lot of people talk about in a democratic society, which is the journalists. They hold them all accountable. They're the watchdog. Okay, so it could be holding government accountable. It could be holding businesses accountable. If they say, hey, you know what? You're not doing what you said you were going to do. This advertising is incorrect, or this product is defective, or you're not doing right by your customers. Right. And the same thing in government. Right. We see this in the Watergate scandal with Nixon, how the journalists uncovered that the corruption that President Nixon had in keeping track of what the Democratic Party was all about and what they were doing, snooping on them and so forth. Right. So this is the watchdog function, which is very important in a democracy. And then you have finally the economic function. This is the fact that, all right, having a broadcast, having a newspaper provides an arena for advertising, enables businesses to communicate to their audience, to sell them something. but it is also a way for journalists to review products. There's a whole magazine called Consumer Reports, which does that. They review products and tell you what's good, what's bad. All right. But journalists do this too. CNET is a website. I believe they have a magazine. If they don't, they used to. And they take a look at technology and what's good and what's bad. And there are plenty of magazines that do this. Okay. But it's just this idea they're informing the public about products. So, which function is most important? I want you to come back here, take a look, and think through that. So when you take a look at the most important function, a lot of you probably said watchdog because of its impact on society, on government, holding them accountable. Some of you said maybe record keeping because you need to be a historian. We need the basic facts, right? Some of you might have said sentry. You need to give people a look ahead. Some of you said, you know what, without entertainment, if people aren't engaged, you're not going to read it. It's kind of like, if a tree fell in the forest and no one's there to hear it, did it make a sound, right? And it's kind of that same idea. Social, maybe not as important. Marketplace, I would say, is up there because we need to know how to think. We need to get some ideas to be able to be creative. Agenda setting, some of you may have said, is the most important. Trying to filter through everything, particularly now with the internet. There's so much information out there. Okay, and maybe economics. So there really is no one right answer. It really depends on your point of view. So we're going to take a break here. We just took a look at the functions of a journalist, and we're going to stop right here.